Welcome to Wizards of the Tower.
Roleplay.
In this episode, a no-brainer. Roll of the classes. Welcome to Wizards of the Tower.
Roleplay.
In this episode, Roll of the Classes. I'm Delaney.
I'm Tom.
I've been a DM and a player since 1979, since first edition.
I am a player, but I'm not a DM.
But that's okay, because not everybody has to be a DM. So, this is kind of a no-brainer episode, I would think at least. Roll of the classes, and what you should be doing when you play your classes. Now, this isn't mandatory by any means. Feel free to play your class in any way you want, but you should have kind of a... There's been people out there that play...
It's one of the biggest gripes that people who play role-playing games, D&D, Pathfinder, whatever, they always tell people, look, play your class. You're not playing your class right. Play your class. You're supposed to be a rogue. Stop being a fighter. You're supposed to be an alchemist. Stop being a bard. That kind of stuff.
Right. So we're going to just go down the alphabet here.
Yeah.
Barbarian. What should you do as a barbarian?
Well, barbarians are meat shields, really. They can't wear heavy armor. They can only wear leather armor. They can utilize all sorts of weapons, but not all weapons, I don't think.
Yeah, actually most weapons.
Can they utilize like the complicated martial weapons?
No, they have to take a feat net.
Okay. Because that's always the thing. It's like, hey, I just found this really neat Dwarven Urgosh. I can't use it. Oh, man.
I don't think too many people, except for a dwarf, can use the Dwarven Urgosh.
Or is
like the Klingon.
Or is it an Orcish Urgosh?
I don't know. It's a weird weapon.
Anyway, it's a weird weapon.
Oh, no, I think it is the Orcish Urgosh, because there's the Dwarven double-headed axe.
That's right. The Dwarven double-headed axe is another one of those that people are like, cool. I can't use it. Oh.
Right. Yeah, your barbarian should be there to help soak up damage and rage and deal a lot of damage.
Yeah. Barbarians are typically supposedly supposed to be kind of uneducated, wild people from the hinterlands who show up in town and drink a lot and, you know, they eat a lot of food and they cause trouble when they get drunk, but when they end up getting in a fight, well, you have to rely on them for being a meat shield and being a frontline fighter.
So history lesson, where does the word barbarian come from?
Well, ancient Rome, when they started encountering tribes from the Far East, typically like Romania and Bulgaria, they called them barbarians because of the way their language sounded to them. It sounded like when they were speaking. The Romans, of course, spoke a very eloquent type of Latin, and the barbarians spoke these languages. It sounded like bar, 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 kind of a barking sound to them, and so they called them barbarians because they were not of Rome, spoke an uncouth language, and didn't, exhibit characteristics of being Roman, that being educated, clean, sophisticated,
highly civilized.
So yeah, you get sort of an uncivilized group of people. Now, that doesn't mean that barbarians were bad or that they were, filthy dirty all the time. They were just
stupid.
Or even stupid. They were just people, who weren't part of the Roman Empire. Right. So that's where you get it.
So a barbarian doesn't necessarily mean that you have to be a wild, crazed, not wearing any kind of clothing kind of person.
Yeah, and of course, the famous barbarians. There's Conan,
right.
Conan the Barbarian. He was a fighter, and a rogue, and he basically, traveled around, fighting here and there, chasing treasure, chasing pleasures, whatever. That's kind of where we get our typical idea of a barbarian from.
Or even from those of us growing up in the early 80s, Thundar the Barbarian.
I remember Thundar, yeah.
Cartoon.
Never watched a lot of Thundar, but I remember that name.
Or even Dungeons and Dragons, Bobby the Barbarian.
Right.
Always had his horn helm and he had the big old club.
Yay.
But a barbarian doesn't necessarily mean what you think, but a barbarian's first role is to be a meat shield and to soak up the damage and to deal the damage.
Now, how would you not want to play a barbarian? Well, you'd not want to play a barbarian as being super sophisticated, super highly intelligent, most of their stat stuff goes into strength and dex and con.
Yeah.
That's where they get. I think barbarians get con boosts, or do they get strength boosts? One of the two.
No, it's all based upon the race.
Okay. Well, I know that they get certain boosts according to how their physical capabilities.
Usually, you want to dump your highest stats into either strength, dex, or con, depending upon what you're trying to do with the character.
Yeah.
Bard. Bard is always kind of one of those fun ones to play. And a Bard,
I love
another name
bards.
for Bard is Scald.
Yeah. I love playing bards. Bards are so unique, and they're so versatile. They can do all sorts of things. Of course, everybody knows when you get stuck in a tight situation, you can't figure out what to do. Bardic knowledge. Oh, I remember this story a long time ago about this tomb that had a trap in it, and some guy said you had to press the third brick from the left in order to open the door.
Oh, I remember the legend of that warrior. Yeah.
I heard that from an old bard one time. Told me about that. That's bardic knowledge. That's why bards are so fun to play.
Hey, wow! What a cool sword we found. Oh yes, the legend on that sword.
Yeah, I have a story about that.
Yeah.
So bards, of course, they're very versatile. They have a lot of various stories and tales that they tell, and they can boost. They can boost your party with
they're
their
a buffer.
they're a
for
buffer.
buffing and debuffing.
Yeah, and so they can also use sonic. When they get higher up, they can use sonic damage, and that's something I've never done in my high level bards that I played. I've never used counter song or counter spell effectively. It's something I'd like to work on in the future when you have a bardic character. Is when you have a evil magic user who's getting ready to work up a verbal component on their spell. Bards are supposed to be able to counterspell that with a counter song, and especially disrupt their verbal component with like a loud noise or something.
Yeah, another great thing that the bards can do is inspire.
Yeah,
when the party's when you got your rogue trying to pick the lock.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, inspiration. Yeah, inspire courage, of course, is another big one.
Inspire courage.
So a lot of those things, they can be very useful. Now, we had a player who hated bards.
Yes.
Remember that?
Oh, yes.
And,
DM.
Yeah, he was a DM who hated bards, and he wouldn't allow bards in his campaign. For some reason. I'll never understand why he didn't allow bards in his campaign. That just did not make any sense. Bards are so fun to play.
Yeah. And you don't have to be... people think bards playing their lute, but a bard can play a flute. A bard can do poetry.
Remember we had that bard he was a storyteller, and he wrote stuff down as he was like writing things, and he was talking to himself as he was writing, and that was all he needed to do.
I had a bard that was a blade dancer.
Yeah?
Yeah, and she would start spinning the blades and dancing, and it would inspire the party. And most of her buffs were kind of based more on to her, but she could do some to the party.
Sure. To me, bards are one of those things that people just don't really utilize that much. And of course, everybody knows the story from the gamers. Hide behind the pile of dead bards
because the bard keeps getting killed.
The bard keeps getting killed. Well, that's the thing. A bard is not a frontline fighter.
No, it should never be a frontline fighter.
A bard should have decent armor so they can protect themselves. And the most they should have for a weapon is a dagger and maybe a light crossbow, and that's about it.
Well, they should have a melee weapon, whether it's a short sword or a rapier or even a long sword.
Yeah, something.
They shouldn't be in the very front attacking.
Yeah, I wouldn't think so. They're a buffing character. Yeah. They're there to help out the rest of the party. And of course, inspiration. Bardic inspiration that's what Delaney was talking about. It's when someone's trying to pick a lock.
Or even fight.
Or fight or something. The bard, one time a day or something, the bard will give inspiration saying, I know you can do it. I know you can do it. Go ahead and do it. You can do it. And of course, you get to either re-roll or you get an extra buff on top of your skill check. And so that really can help.
Right. Now, in 3.5, bards actually could heal.
They could convert bardic spells into healing spells. And I had a bard that did that because we were in a group that did not have a cleric or a healer. We had some potions, but that was it.
Yeah.
My bard was the healer of the group, and he had to convert all his bardic spells into cure lights and cure mods. So it saved everybody's bacon.
Yeah. Bards are quite useful for that.
Yeah, I love playing bards. I wish I could play them a lot more often.
Yeah. Now, clerics. A lot of people play clerics, they don't want to be the healer. They think, I don't want to be a cleric because I always have to heal.
There's nothing wrong with that. Clerics have their domains: healing domain, battle domain, that sort of thing that they can work on.
Even weather.
Yeah. They have the sky, they have water, they have all sorts of things. I like playing clerics somewhat. I've had to play them too many times because a lot of times people don't want to play a healer. And I'll play one just because, I'll do it. One thing I like about clerics is their spells, they get instantaneously.
Well, actually, no. That's a rule that we have in our game that our clerics get. It's based upon your deity is granting you what you need at the time instead of having to memorize. So we do it more like the sorcerer gets their spells. I
mean, it may not be actual from the group, but that's the way you do it.
Yeah,
so that's fine.
And there's been a few DMs that we've had that have done it. Now, they're typically the way the cleric is supposed to get them is just like a wizard. You have to memorize it, but to us that doesn't make sense because you're working for your deity, and your deity should grant you what you need in the time of need. Yeah, and that's the way we look at it.
And there's a very limited.
And it actually makes them a little bit more powerful in that respects, and a lot more useful.
It does, but but they're limited to the sort of spells that they can throw. If you're a good cleric, you can't throw evil spells. So that kind of stuff. So you can't do everything, but you can do a lot of stuff. Clerics, I've had a lot of fun playing clerics, man. They do a lot of really cool things. They heal a lot. They are great in diplomacy. They can boost. They can buff.
Yeah, if you bump your charisma up, they and the bard are usually some of the best.
Yeah, they
that
can.
And Paladin, which we'll get to.
Yeah, you can actually have teamwork feats with clerics. Because they can operate as a cleric and have a follower with them. And that's, as long as they follow your deity, then you can have a follower that follows along with you. An acolyte, I guess you could say.
Well, that's if you take the leadership feat.
Yeah, but you can take that as a cleric.
Anybody can take it.
But it works well with clerics, because then you have an acolyte.
Yeah.
Who can follow you around, an acolyte of your deity.
Now, clerics are actually a second-line fighter type.
Yeah.
Because they can wear the heavier armor, and they can use some of the better weapons.
They can. You've got to take some feats so you can use exotic weapons. But the thing about clerics is it's true that they're a second-line fighter, but they've got to be able to absorb enough punishment so that they can get up to the front-line fighters and heal them. And usually what you want to do is make sure you got plenty of cure mods, plenty of cure lights, plenty of other curing spells, and even also their channel energies that they can use for bursting and healing the whole group.
Right.
So you've got to make sure you've got plenty of that. Like I used to always take extra channel, and then you take selective channeling, so that you're not going to actually cure your enemy.
Right. You move up to 20 to 30 feet of the party and start doing your selective channeling, so you're not healing the enemy, but you're healing your party.
Yeah.
Or even alignment channel if you want to go that far.
Yeah.
But selective channel would be a better one to pick.
Yeah, and then of course we all know about clerics is that they're the enemy of the undead.
Yes.
They're banes of undead. So you always have to have turn undead. So you get a big cleric in there, you're in a tomb, and all of a sudden the wraiths start coming out of the wall, and the cleric raises their holy symbol. And if they can't turn undead, the next spell they're going to hit them with is daylight. So you got to make sure your cleric has daylight.
Or they can actually channel to affect the undead.
They can. Yeah, they can. You can do a lot of damage. They can use holy fire. They can use holy light. They can use flame column, which I used a lot in mine, which is because it's divine energy, and undead can't escape from it. They have to take damage if it hits.
Yeah.
So clerics can be really, really useful. It's just that a lot of people don't really get them right. They like to play them as a frontline fighter, and so they don't have a lot of hit points.
Or the ultimate the healer, and that's a lot of people don't want to be the healer of the group.
Yeah, they don't want to be the healer. They want to take the glory. That kind of stuff, and they don't, they want to try to make their cleric into a fighting healer.
So here's an interesting tidbit from first edition. Clerics were prevented from drawing blood, so that's why they could never use a sword or spears. They always had to use maces and hammers.
Okay.
The funny thing is in the medieval times, a knight actually would prefer a hammer or a mace because it did more damage, and it would still draw blood.
Well, sure.
Because a flanged mace is a
hammer. If you crush somebody's
crow's beak.
Yeah, or a crow's beak. Yeah.
You got the flat end of the hammer, and you spin it around, and you got your crow's beak, and you put right in. It's a piercing weapon.
I didn't know that. Yeah. I didn't know they were forbidden from drawing blood. That's interesting.
Yeah, which was just kind of ridiculous. That's why I think they were trying to base it upon Saint Cuthbert, because Saint Cuthbert in legend always had a mace, and that's why they were doing that.
Well, in a sense, I can kind of see that. They're holy. They shouldn't be actually fighting, because you do have other classes who do the holy fighting, in a way, like crusaders and stuff like that. So,
But you could take the whole other side of that, the Knights Hospitaller.
Well, yeah, the Knights Hospitaller, yeah.
And they were the healers.
Well,
so
they
were
also
kind of
fought.
a cleric, and they were a cleric, and they fought, and they would use a sword, or a mace, or a hammer, or...
The Hospitallers, in case anybody's read anything about them, they're a very interesting order. And they never get enough press, because the Templars always get all the press, but the Hospitallers... and they even exist today. Knights Hospitallers exist as an actual order today. They were not disbanded.
Well, that's where we get the name Hospital.
Hospital, yeah. They were actually, healers, fighters, defenders of the faith, that sort of thing.
Scientists, in a way.
Yeah. Yeah, so, they were the dark cloak people with the white cross. Not where the Templar had the white cloak with the red cross, which is weird, because the red cross is the sign of medicine.
Right.
But... so it's kind of changed a little bit that you have the white cross on the black cloak for the Hospitallers. But the Hospitallers were always heavily armored so that they could survive the fight, and so they could survive to heal. So that's kind of what your cleric has to be. Your cleric has to be armored well enough, and it's good for them to have a lot of armor so they can survive those blasts, because I think they're a D8, aren't they?
Yes.
So your hit points are going to be low. Well, of course, you can always heal yourself. Right. But you still got to be able to survive those initial attacks so that you can get up there and heal your frontline fighters, or else they're all going down.
And then everybody's going down.
Yeah. So, and you should always protect your cleric. You should always protect your healer. I've been in games before where people have let the cleric go down, and then the fighters are running around seeking glory, and the cleric just lays there dying. And I'm like, hey, little help here. Little help here. And they're over there picking locks or trying to backstab or running around. And you're like, little help, I burned all my healing spells. You guys got to help me get back up. That's one of the bad things about being being in games like that.
Yeah. Let's move on to the Druid. Now, where did we get the term of Druid? That's an ancient Celtic. And,
sure. Well, I mean, the idea of a Druid that we have in our game in Pathfinder or
Dungeons and
Dragons really different from a Druid back then.
Yes.
Here, Druids, are seen as like nature-based earth worshippers, where, 1,000 years ago or farther, 2,000 years ago, they were the holy people of the tribe. So they're a lot more like shamans than they
knowledge and past knowledge and
so they were a lot more
educated.
They were priests, and they existed in a priest class,
worshipped and revered.
So, and of course, their words were authority. That sort of thing. Now, Druids are essentially, call the plants, call the sky, call the water,
summon the animals.
It's like, I don't know how that changed.
Call the lightning from the sky.
I don't know how that changed from the traditional sort of what a Druid was. From the Celtic idea of a Druid as being a holy person to all of a sudden you have like this chick, elven chick or whatever, wandering through the forest with like flowers in her hair and, with a fox companion, and she's like, by the power of the Everlight, and then all of a sudden there's like plants coming or whatever, and stuff like that. It's like, that's a Druid? How'd you get to be a Druid? But hey, whatever, it's all fantasy, right?
So Druids are actually kind of like the cleric, except for they're not quite so front line, but their job is to debuff the monsters and summon allies to help and slow the enemy down, and also they can heal.
Now, aren't Druids a little more chaotic than typically you would think?
No. Now, in first edition, Druids had to be neutral. And the other thing with Druids is once you reached a certain level, you couldn't go any higher until you found a Druid of the next higher level and defeated them in combat.
What?
Yeah. It's crazy.
That was in first edition.
That was actually in first edition.
They probably got rid of that, right?
They did.
Okay, good.
Did.
That sounds a little wild.
Yeah.
Sounds pretty militant, actually, which sounds just weird. That sounds like some kind of weird warlock thing that you would make warlocks do. You know, you can't go past level 6 until you find a more powerful warlock and kill them and steal their magic or spells. That just sounds weird.
Yeah. Now druids are fun. You know, being able to. They can also be scouts because they can turn into an animal and run off. And
I got to say that in our games, we've never really had an effective druid player. We've had some druids.
Actually, I played a druid once and had the bear.
Oh,
Bela Bear Friend.
Okay, but the thing is, we never played that game very long.
No, I think it was a one shot.
Yeah,
but it was quite fun. I love playing.
Well,
Bela Bear Friend. She had a bear companion that she liked better than most people.
I don't blame her.
Loved her bear.
The thing is we just don't have. You know, we've just never had a lot of games where people have been very effective at playing druids.
No.
We've had some druids, and they've always been rather weird. I can't
think of too many people who played druids in our games, though.
We only had the one where the guy turned into a tree out in the middle of the desert.
Yeah. So, an anecdote here. So, we were playing in a campaign, one of the first campaigns in our group, and it was originally a 3-5.
Yeah.
And we're out in the middle of the desert in a tribe of nomadic people. Now this, I don't know if you should have watched the other episodes, but we talked about the monk who wanted to enslave. Well, it was part of the same encampment. Well, the druid decided in the middle of the camp he was going to turn into a tree. And here's this tree, and it's like, nonchalantly, it's like, okay, where did this tree come? Out in the middle of the desert.
No trees anywhere, 100 miles around.
And we all joked, it's like, oh, firewood, let's chop it down.
All of a sudden there's a tree, they're like, oh, look at that, firewood.
Now that druid also liked to be the soup.
The soup kitchen druid.
The soup kitchen. He had cooking as a skill.
You see what I mean about, you know, playing your class? Play your darn class, man.
He was like the soup Nazi from Seinfeld.
Can you imagine?
No soup for you.
Can you imagine if you were an effective druid in the desert, what you could do? Liquefy sand, summon snakes, summon a sandstorm. You'd be really effective. You really could be.
Or even in the middle of the forest, having the trees.
Well, yeah, but I'm just saying, like, you know, even if you are out in the middle of the day, because there's water druids too.
Oh yes.
There's all kind of druids, and so you could really be an effective nature-based buffer, fighter, whatever. They're not a frontline fighter, obviously, but they can do a really good job. Yeah. It's just you've got to know how to play your class correctly and what you're supposed to do. So,
but the druid I played, I actually enjoyed playing.
Yeah.
Now here's a real no-brainer: a fighter.
Well, I mean, a fighter's a fighter. You know, they're just like a soldier. That's all they are. They take orders. They're a warrior. They use all sorts of weapons. They have all kind of armor. They're good in strength or dex, but they're pretty weak at will, typically.
Or intelligence.
And int. Yeah, you don't want to put a lot of int into a fighter. After all they are is a professional mercenary, pretty much.
There's a lot of people who don't like playing fighters because they just think they're so, I don't know, one way to play them.
Well, fighters can be fun because you do a lot of fighting. You do a lot of damage.
You're the front person.
Yeah, they're swinging a sword, they're swinging an axe, they're shooting a bow.
A lot of attacks.
In our current campaign, I'm playing a fighter and a ranger. I'm playing a fighter, and my fighter's deadly with her bow. Yeah. Truly.
A different kind of fighter. Yeah, not a frontline fighter, a distance fighter.
Yeah, and like a sniper in a sort of a way, but who does a tremendous amount of damage because of all her bow feats.
And the way you would look at her would be like the longbowman of medieval times.
Yeah, that's kind of how I see her. I see her as sort of like a longbow fighter.
Everyone always thinks of a ranger, which we'll talk about in a minute, as being the atypical distance or range attack, but a fighter can do it just as good and sometimes even better.
Oh yeah, they get, if you're a human fighter, you get all those feats. You get a feat every time you level, depending on what you do. And so you can always take, and Delaney has this rule that you have to take a combat feat for every non-combat feat.
No, it's three for every third combat. For every feat, it has to be a non-combat feat.
Okay.
But that does not include your fighter combat feats.
Right, yeah, because you also get extra feats as a fighter.
Right.
So, and they can pretty much use just about any weapon.
Or armor.
And they're very versatile. And, you could build a skillful fighter. I mean, because what would a general be? A general would be just a very skillful fighter.
Or a paladin.
Yeah.
Most likely.
Or a paladin. Yeah, but you could still be a fighter. And I've never really played pure fighters up until this campaign that we're in.
And that's because Tom drew that as his class.
Yeah.
We randomly generated the classes on what everyone was playing. Now we have an NPC fighter, Frostwolf, who is as strong as can be. He's not the smartest guy, but he's a nice guy, and man, can he hit. He gets up there, he's not afraid to go up there, and he's taking out giants on his own.
Yep. They can become really, really skilled, as they get higher up in levels, and they can become very strong, very dexterous. They can get a lot of con. Fighters is where you can kind of just start out, if you want to start out with the game.
Yeah, if you've never played, Fighters is a good place to start.
Yeah, it's a good place to start because it's easy to play.
Yeah.
So you're just a sword swinger, but you can get a lot of the angles on what you're supposed to be doing, how spells work, how ranged attacks work, how power attacks work, how cleave attacks work.
Greater cleave,
movement, what you do, what kind of weapons you do, how to calculate damage, how to calculate crits, all that stuff. So you can learn all that by just being a fighter, And then if you play a fighter for a while, then you maybe want to branch out into a specialty field of fighter.
Now, you have a feat that you like to take. Well, 2 feats actually as fighters.
Well, I usually take toughness.
Yeah, because toughness gives you extra hit points.
That gives you extra hit points, and you can take toughness.
But it's a non-combat feat.
I think you can take toughness again and again. If I remember, I'll have to double check that. That may not be true, but I know it's a way to get an extra hit point in there.
I think it's 2 extra hit points per level.
Yeah, so you get extra hit points, which is really very valuable. And then I also like to take. You can always take Die Hard, which means that even if you fall below 0, you don't automatically die. You automatically stabilize yourself.
Right.
There's another one that I like, which is really, really good, and that's Endure Elements. And
there was another one where you could wear your armor in bed.
Well, that's part of it. Is where you can sleep in your armor. What is that one called? I think it's Endurance.
Yeah, it's Endurance.
Yeah, Endurance is really cool because you don't have to take your armor off at night. You can sleep in it, and you don't wake up fatigued. So that's something that you can keep in mind. Is if you're going to have a fighter, it's like during the night when you get attacked, and you usually get attacked at night by these various creatures. During the night when you get attacked, you jump up, you're in your armor already, you don't have to try to put it on.
Yeah, you're not spending minutes trying to put on your plate mail or even your chain mail.
That's a thing that almost always falls by the wayside when we get attacked at night. The dragon jumps out of the gloom, starts laying waste to the horses. Everybody jumps up and they want to attack the dragon to try to save the horses. Who's got their armor on? The big paladins and stuff jump up and they're like, "A dragon! Slay the dragon!" Oh, hold on there, Mr. Beatface. What's your armor class? Well, it's 25. Without your armor? Well, it's 15. Do you have your armor on? No. Well, you're going to spend...
Well, I was sleeping in it. Oh, so
you're fatigued. Okay.
So now you're taking minuses to hit.
Yeah, so keep that in mind if you're going to play a fighter. One of the best ones you want to get is Endurance, so that you can sleep in your armor. And then you have some other saves according to different sorts of terrain issues to where you don't become tired and you don't take minuses. So just keep in mind that that's a very, very valuable feat to take. There's other things too, like if you're going to be a kind of a distance type of fighter where you're going to use a bow, make sure you take point blank shot and mini shot and things like that, so that you can concentrate on the type of attacks you're going to make, so that you can fire into combat, you can shoot past your friends, that sort of thing, so that you don't take minuses to that. And of course, there's like long shot where you can shoot over 100 feet and you don't take minuses.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of things like that too. But there's also other parts about being a fighter, is that you take specialty with swords or with axes, or you can take various kind of armor boosts to where you can wear any kind of armor.
Yeah, weapon focuses and
armor focus, shield focus too is another one.
Yeah. Improved shield.
Yeah.
Shield bash.
You can use shield bash. You can use your shield as a weapon. So being a fighter,
2-weapon fighting.
Yeah, 2-weapon fighting. Being a fighter just sounds like so basic, but it can actually be quite fun and quite complex.
Yeah, I actually kind of like playing fighters. I've played quite a few fighters in my life.
This is the first time I'm playing one, and I'm finding that although she doesn't get to participate in a lot of really fun things, although it is really nice to lay a hurt onto some enemies. It truly is.
Shooting 3 arrows in a round.
It's fun. It's fun to lay some serious hurt when you're shooting from a magic bow, and they've got DR, but they don't have DR against your magic weapon, and they're like getting pincushioned, and that's pretty cool.
My least favorite character.
Monk.
I don't actually allow monks in most of my campaigns.
Thank goodness.
And I was actually talking to somebody yesterday about monks. And so monks are your typical martial arts. Okay?
Hi-ya!
And in first edition, monks were actually not a base class. It was kind of an extra class that you could play. And I just never got into monks. Monks, to me, have too many attacks and do a lot of damage for the fist. Now, somebody who actually does martial arts, I don't do martial arts, but I've known a lot of people who've done martial arts in their life, and I've done, military-based combat, and to kill somebody as a monk would be kind of tough until later levels. So when you're I think it's a white belt, I think at first, or brown belt, or whatever they call it. I'm not that familiar with martial arts, but you can do damage to people, but it's not lethal damage.
Yeah.
And my belief, I think if I was going to allow monks in my world, monks would do non-lethal damage from like 1st to 7th level, half lethal damage from 7 to 14, and in 15 to 20, then their damage could start being lethal. Because I just don't think, I think monks can be so overpowered and come in and just, I'm doing 5 attacks, I'm doing stunning fist and stunning blow, and I'm knocking the monster out, and I don't know, I just find them to be...
They're not a bad class. They're really not. Yeah. It's just depending on the kind of people who played them. And we had a lot of bad experiences with a certain character who I'm not going to mention any names, but we had a certain character who was always in our games who overpowered their darn monks.
He was a min-maxer.
They maxed those monks out. And I remember specifically one campaign where his monk was in a village, and there was an enemy encampment out of town, and the monk flew over to the enemy encampment, got into the enemy encampment, assassinated 5 of the leaders of the enemy encampment, flew back all the way back into town, and that was basically our campaign. And the monk did it all with, like, every time he rolled, he had 7 moves, and every time he did a flurry of blows, it was 40 flurries of blows, and a
little bit exaggerated.
Maybe just barely exaggerating, folks, really. And I was just kind of sitting back like, well, great. I mean, why aren't you just playing the whole game by yourself then? Yeah. I mean, I could just sit over here and do nothing.
It kind of took away the fun of everyone else. Now, my belief is a monk. When I think of a monk, I'm thinking the European monk.
Yeah.
Who was in a monastery, who was writing out the books and the knowledge, and
providing knowledge,
praying and doing vows of silence, and raising grapes and making wine.
Which would be a good character to play.
But then you have the Shaolin monk, which is based upon kung fu.
Yeah,
those of us who grew up with kung fu.
There's nothing wrong with that kind of class. There really is. It just depends on how it's played. All right, and monks can be great. It's just the reason why Delaney doesn't allow monks in her campaign is because of the bad taste we've got in our mouth from how that class was abused by a certain person who we used to game with. Yeah. And so that's why nobody wants monks. Just because they just don't seem to fit. But
and we're not bad-mouthing monks.
No, culturally it would be culturally, in my opinion, it would be great to do an Eastern style campaign and have some monks. I mean, think about it. Monks, there's a lot of things that they can do. Their storylines would be fantastic. They really would be. Very, it's kind of mysterious and magical at the same time with kind of a religious element. It would be really cool. It's just that people take that it's a very easily abused class, in my opinion, and I really don't like it when you get like these these players who essentially they min-max the thing out and they power game. And pretty soon they're dominating the whole game. And that's the problem.
The one time I have played a monk in all my years, I did play a monk a few years ago, and I played it as a halfling monk. Mm-hmm. So I wasn't doing the massive amounts of damage. It was smaller.
So there's sort of a weird kind of subclass of monk. And it's not really a monk, but it is a player along the same lines as a monk, and that's a brawler.
It's an archetype.
Yeah. So I played a brawler. Big Lovely, who was a brawler. Now, the great thing about brawlers is they can't use weapons. They can only use very simple weapons like clubs, rocks, things like that, and they do non-lethal damage. But the great thing about brawlers is once they get into a fight with a certain fighter or any kind of a fighter who has a unique fighting style, they can use a monk ability to mimic that other fighter's style and turn it around and use it against them.
Yeah.
And that's kind of a Pathfinder thing that you can get as a brawler. Brawlers use they use improvised weapons like throwing chairs and stuff like that. They have a fight with anything. They have all, and they're really dexterous and strong. And most of all their damage is non-lethal, so they can essentially pummel people and beat people up and things like that. And they're really super duper fun to play. They really are, because they're like the big bully in the tavern that, you know, as the hero turns back to drink like that, or the
slams the chair
over someone's head, or they get bumped and they turn around and all of a sudden it erupts in a bar fight. So there was a really cool part of our game where I was playing a brawler, and some baddies came in, and my brawler was a very strong, dexterous fighter. And some baddies came in, and my brawler, and they said some bad words about us and some of the people. So my brawler got up, walked over, and picked a fight with them. And they're like, you pick a fight with Eric the Red, huh? Prepare to die. And my brawler grabbed a chair, broke the chair up, grabbed a chair leg, and proceeded to beat Eric the Red within an inch of his life. Because every time Eric the Red would try to fight somehow, my brawler would mimic his fighting style, turn it back around, and beat him with it. And it was just super duper fun to play. So anyway, that's kind of a subclass of the monk that, or a subpart
it's
of the monk.
Fighter. It's actually the fighter, but
it is a fighter,
kind of like a monk.
But it is kind of like a monk in that sense. So that's the great thing about Pathfinders. There's so many variabilities you can make to work that, you know, you can create a character that is just so fun and so unique and so broad that you can just have total roleplay fun with it. And to be honest, I had a lot of fun playing Big Lovely.
The original Big Lovely was on the pirate.
He was a cook. He was a cook. He was a cook, but he was also a brawler.
Yeah.
Yeah. So he could fight like that, and he was, and I still want to play him again sometime because he was really, really super fun. Imagine him as like. He's like in the movies where you always have the big guy in the bar who's always like grabbing the table and picking the whole table up and running across the
westerns,
bar.
The old westerns.
And he's plowing through a whole pile of people and knocking them out the door. Yeah, or an old pirate movie where he picks up the big keg and throws it and it takes out 5 people. That's like a brawler.
Yeah. So we're going to end this episode of Roll of the Classes. We're going to call this part 1 because this is actually far more in depth than I thought we were.
Yeah.
Going to really get into.
Yeah.
So we want to thank you for watching Wizards of the Tower.
Roleplay.
May all your adventures be epic.
And keep on rolling.
See you, folks. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.